My phone rang. I had no pre-knowledge that this was happening. I don't chase endorsements. If they come, that's awesome. But the only endorsement that I seek is the American people. But I got a phone call a couple weeks ago. My wife and I were sitting down having a cup of coffee, and I answered it. The lady said, "Is this Loren Culp?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Would you please hold for President Trump?"
This is Mitchell Shaw with the New American Magazine, and joining me today is Loren Culp, who is running for Congress in the state of Washington. Loren, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate you joining me.
Absolutely, Mitch. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Loren, the last time you and I did an official interview was when you were running for governor of Washington State against Inslee. Um, and Inslee outspent you by what percentage, Loren?
By almost 3 to 1.
3-1. Did he
Right.
beat you 3-1 in the polls?
He did not. No, we were neck and neck in the polls, and towards the end, the polls that we had saw, I was actually up by 2 to 3 points. And the citizens of Washington State absolutely came out and supported me. I received more votes than any Republican gubernatorial candidate in Washington State history by a long ways. We raised $3.2 million from all small dollar donors. It was absolutely amazing. We had rallies all over the state. 2 to 3 thousand people came out to the rallies that I put on all across the state. Washington State's never seen a campaign like we had in 2020. Despite that fact, for some reason, we can guess, right? Same thing happened with President Trump. He was very unpopular governor. Had locked us down, shut down small businesses. But amazingly, he received about 500,000 more votes than he did previously. He's a three-time governor now.
Now, that's its own sort of can of worms to unpack, because as you point out, he received, you say, nearly 500,000 more votes than he had received previously. Is it likely that there were 500,000 new voters that all decided to vote for him, or 500,000 people who had been sitting out elections up until that point, but suddenly decided they needed to find their civic duty and race down to the polls to vote for Inslee instead of Loren Culp? And my knee-jerk reaction would be that is probably not what happened.
Yeah, that is not what happened. For the last 3 cycles, the governor is elected for 4 years. The last 3 cycles, the Republican candidate has gotten about 1.4 million votes. This has been a Democrat-controlled state for the last 40 years, and we have been a mail-in ballot state for almost that long. And so the last election, Inslee got 1,750,000, shy of 2 million votes. And we knew to win, we needed to beat what the previous Republican candidates had got, 1.4 million. We needed to get 1.7 million to 1.8 million votes to win, and we would win. And I got just 1,000 or two less than 1,750,000 votes in the gubernatorial election. So we hit the
Wow.
target, but somehow they found a lot more votes. And just a side note on that, our Secretary of State, who everyone claims, we couldn't have a crooked election because she is a Republican, Kim Wyman. She now works for President Biden because she did such a great job traveling around the United States, helping different states with their mail-in voting. She got rewarded by being hired by President Biden, now works for the Biden administration, working on election integrity, if you can imagine that.
That is par for the course.
Yes, it is.
So now I guess the impetus of your decision to sort of wade into the political fray, when I first spoke with you, you were the chief of police in the thriving metropolis of Republic, Washington. What's the population of Republic?
Well, Republic is a very small, and that is a fitting name too, Republic, right? Republic is a
Yes.
very small mountain town in northeastern Washington of about 1,100 people, and I was the chief of police there. And back in 2018, when this state passed an anti-gun initiative that restricted citizens' Second Amendment rights, I stood up against that. I was the first law enforcement executive in the state of Washington to say that I will not enforce that law. It violates citizens' constitutional rights, and I will not enforce it in my jurisdiction. And that got a lot of attention. I was on the national news. I was on Tucker Carlson. Um, and that led to me writing a book called American Cop. I traveled around Washington State in the first part of 2019. After that, became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. And I was going to sportsman shows, gun shows, and talking about citizens' rights and how we need to stand up for our God-given constitutionally protected rights. And people started asking me to run for governor. And that is how I started into politics. Before that, I never had any desire to be in politics. Um,
Right.
I was just going to spend the rest of my days. I'm 61 years old. I was going to spend the rest of my days in a patrol car protecting the people that I served. And so that started me down the road, ran for governor, beat the establishment candidates, the Republican establishment candidate, by a 2-to-1 margin in the primary. There was a field of 36 candidates for governor of Washington. I came out of the primary, and it was me and Jay Inslee into the general election, despite the fact that I got no financial support from the Republican Party whatsoever.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack that a little bit moving forward into your campaign now for Congress, for the House of Representatives.
Mhm.
But when you talk about, for instance, your standing up against, and I think that was, if memory serves me, I 1639.
Yes.
So I still remember that. That's great. So I'm not as old as I thought I was. Yeah, Initiative 1639, I 1639, which I wrote about, and I interviewed you, and I think we did a video about that at the time as well.
I think so.
I think roughly just over 50% of the sheriffs in Washington state stood their ground against I 1639,
Yeah,
and
that
one chief of police. So
that didn't that didn't happen at first though. When I came out publicly the day after that passed and said I would not enforce it. And I thought that sheriffs and police chiefs would be coming out of the woodwork all across the state to say the same thing, but there were only a couple. That's what led me to write the book American Cop. I wrote that
right.
the initiative passed in November. I wrote American Cop in December to get the information out to the people and other sheriffs to stand up for citizens' rights. After that book came out, we ended up with over about 60% of the sheriffs in this state decided, yeah, we need to stand up for citizens' rights against this tyranny.
And zero other chiefs of police, correct?
There were a couple other chiefs of police. There were
Okay, good.
actually some that came out against my stance, saying that we
Of
need to
course.
enforce the law no matter what it is, if you can believe
Yeah,
that.
so oh, I
Horrible.
absolutely can. So one of the things that I think this underscores, besides the sort of, I guess, politically powerful differences between sheriffs and chiefs of police, which I think most of our viewers probably recognize this difference. But for those who don't, I'll explain. Sheriffs can pretty much do whatever is, as long as it's constitutional and they have some constitutional justification for it. Sheriffs have a very wide path of how to exercise their power. They answer directly to the voters. So as long as the voters understand why the sheriff is doing this or that, he's okay. Chiefs of police answer either to mayors or city councils. So you serve at the pleasure of either the mayor or the city council, depending on how your contract is drawn. And so a chief of police has to think a little harder before he stands up and does the right thing. He has to ask himself, am I willing to tank my career over this stand? And sadly, too many are not. So thank you, Loren, for being willing to do that.
Yeah,
It
and
also under Oh, go
And
ahead.
as it turned out, I did lose my career. I could have gone to work for other agencies, but at my age, I didn't want to start at the bottom. But right before the gubernatorial election in November of 2020, the city council of Republic voted to do away with my department and including my position, a department that has been around for over 120 years. They voted to do away with it and go with a contract with the county, with the sheriff who did not come out publicly like I did. So yeah, I ended up not having a job after the election, but I'm continuing on. I'm not giving up. I'm running for Congress here in 2020, 2022.
Well, that's right. So the other thing that I think it underscores, and you and I have had this conversation before, and my college roommate way back in the day was from a little place called Snohomish, Washington. And he and I would talk about this even then, way back in college, that there are really two Washington states. There's the Washington state that's dominated by the large metropolitan areas that's very, very liberal. And then there's all of the rest of Washington state that's very, very conservative, but gets sort of that conservative vote gets washed out by the liberal large cities, right? I think there are also, and what we're seeing since 2016, and this is not an endorsement of any candidate or any party. That's not what the New American does, but we do report on news, and it's important to recognize that one of the things that Donald Trump's candidacy and election and presidency did was to illustrate the fact that there really are two Americas. There's liberal America, and then there's what they like to call Trump world, and then that's fine. I'll own that term for their sake. In fact, we even did a special edition of the New American magazine. The title was Trump World. So there's this Trump world thing, and I guess what we'd have to call Biden world right now, but he's a transient sort of passing phase in all of this. It was there before him. It will be there after him. But so much of that even affects in the Republican Party. So you've made the decision to run for Congress. What district is that, Loren?
It's the 4th congressional district in Washington State. I'm running against um, Dan Newhouse, who's been in office for I think about 6 terms, and he's a Republican, but he voted to impeach President Trump, and then he doubled down and voted for the January 6th commission. He's also voted for red flag laws and sponsored a bill that would incentivize people coming across our southern border as well. So
Yeah, so
that's who I'm running against.
that sort of illustrates my point with Republicans like that. Who needs Democrats, right?
Right,
So
exactly.
so you're running against him, and I know that you said that when you ran as governor, you received no assistance whatsoever from the Republican establishment. The primary is when?
It's August 2nd. It's a primary, so short of 5 months.
All right, so you've got a primary coming up in August, and in that primary, you are one Republican running against this Republican incumbent. How many other Republicans are running
There's
as
about
of now?
there's about 4 other Republicans running, 1 Democrat, who,
Okay,
by the way, is about tied in the polls with the incumbent. So the
okay,
Democrat and the incumbent are tied at 18%. In that poll that was verified and published by Breitbart News, I received 30%. So I'm way ahead of the field. The rest of the pack is in single digits. But despite the fact, that during the 2020 race for governor, I beat the establishment candidate in the primary 2-1, raised $3.2 million from small dollar donors. And despite the fact that I received more votes than any Republican gubernatorial candidate in Washington state history, the Republican Party is actively working against me again. There's one Republican county party that voted to endorse a state legislator who voted to expand the governor's emergency powers, which he has used to close small businesses, lock us down, fire people for not getting the vaccine, kept this mask mandate charade going for over 2 years, closed down schools. I've also got another Republican Party chair that's been saying I've been speaking against the Republican Party and encouraging others to not support me because I said the following words: I don't care about a party as much as I do about the American people and America.
Well,
That's all
that's
it took. And they are actively working against me.
you sound like one of those January 6th insurrectionists, Loren.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, to them.
so clearly, we're not shocked that the Republican establishment is working actively against you. But the big news recently for you is that you recently received a fairly interesting endorsement from the ostensible leader of the January 6th insurrection, Donald Trump. Do you want to tell us about that, Loren?
Yes, I did. I got a phone call a couple weeks ago. My phone rang. I had no pre-knowledge that this was happening. I don't chase endorsements. If they come, that's awesome. But the only endorsement that I seek is the American people. But I got a phone call a couple weeks ago. My wife and I were sitting down having a cup of coffee, and I answered it. The lady said, "Is this Loren Culp?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Would you please hold for President Trump?" And I talked to President Trump for about 10 minutes. And he said that he fully endorses me and is behind me. And we're going to take out the Rhino Dan Newhouse here in Washington's 4th Congressional District. I was subsequently invited down to Mar-a-Lago. I went there a week before last, spent the whole day at Mar-a-Lago, met with President Trump and talked about what's going on. He has been working tirelessly, vetting candidates all across the United States to take back Congress, take back the Senate with real conservatives, not squishy, mushy backbone Republicans, but real conservatives. And then he did not say he's going to run in 2024, but I pretty much can tell you that I feel like 100% he will run in 2024 and hopefully have a real conservative Congress and Senate when he does take back the White House.
All right. So, in closing, let's talk about this, Loren. You're running for Congress. Everybody and their sister runs for Congress sometimes, right? Well, maybe not everybody and their sister, but lots and lots and lots of people run for Congress. We got a whole bunch of those guys and gals in there right now that I wouldn't give 50 cents for.
Right.
What makes Loren Culp different from the field?
Well, I understand that the Constitution, it's not very long, it's not very complicated, but that is an employee handbook. That is the employee handbook that we give our public servants when we vote them into office to represent us. And they swear an oath to follow the Constitution, to uphold and defend the Constitution. They raise their right hand, say, "I swear that I will." But they get into office and they don't. And I am a very firm believer in the Constitution and getting our federal government back within the confines of the Constitution. According to the 10th Amendment, anything not written in the Constitution for the federal government to do is left up to the states and the people. And I will work towards that. We need voter integrity. We need our secure borders. We need to unentangle ourselves from foreign affairs. We need to not ever have another 20-year war. We need to take care of America, and the federal government needs to abide by the Constitution. And there are so many things that the federal government touches in our lives, from our education, our healthcare, regulations, that we need to get the federal government out of that business. There is nothing in the Constitution that says the federal government is going to be in charge of teaching our kids. That is left up to the states and the people, according to the 10th Amendment. And I'm going to work to get education back in the hands of the parents at the state level and local level.
Well, God bless you, Loren. Tell me, how can people reach you? How can people find you? Is there a website?
Yes. Yeah. My
Where
campaign
should we send people?
My campaign website is culp4congress.com. And this is a fight against the establishment. And I need all the help that I can get. Even though I'm representing Washington's 4th Congressional District, Congress, people from all across the United States, when they vote, it affects everyone in the United States. So I need help financially. I'm not going to get it from the establishment, rhinos, Republicans. It's going to come from we the people. So culp4congress.com. I appreciate it.
God bless you, Loren. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Mitch.